So today's topic is embracing our shadow. Shin Buddhist wisdom for when life gets difficult. So, I'm so glad you are here. Whether you are an old or new Dharma friend, you are most welcome to this session. Together, we are truly fellow travelers, spending this time to deepen our understanding of and appreciation for the life-giving and hopeful teachings of Shin Buddhism. This image here of Amida looking back is called Mikaeri no Amida in Japanese, and is found in a temple called Eikando in Kyoto. The wooden statue stands about 3 to 4 feet high, with its head turned to the left, looking back for stragglers. Legend states that back in the 13th century, during a religious procession, the monk Eikan was falling behind, and so Amida turned back and urged him to hurry up to join the group. This figure symbolizes the compassion of Amida Buddha, which embraces and never abandons anyone, especially those of us who are lost, confused, and struggling to manage our lives in the face of difficulty. And like the lyrics of this famous song by Stevie Nicks asks, right? Can my heart rise above? Right? Can I sail through the changing ocean tides? And can we handle the seasons of our life? And so that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about how do the Shin Buddhist teachings help us to manage life, our lives, that we're living in this present moment of immense challenges. To say our journey over the past 19 months has been challenging is an understatement, right? Dealing with the pandemic has been paramount. However, it has only been a backdrop to the everyday transitions and challenges that have never stopped making our world turn. The diagnosis of a major illness, the ending of a relationship, the death of a loved one, the loss of a pet, a new birth, a marriage, a new job. The cycle of life has continued uninterrupted, and we have had to try to manage everything, all of this, without losing hope. While times have been challenging, we have also discovered what the Buddha taught about birth, old age, sickness, and death, that these are eternal truths that have enabled us to find our footing on the deck of a ship sailing on stormy seas. Embracing the groundlessness of our lives has enabled us to bend and to twist without breaking when things keep falling apart. I don't know about you, but right, the pandemic has made all these ordinary stresses in our life a lot more, right? And I think that's just what everyone's feeling, at this moment in time. But the Dharma truly offers us wisdom for living in these challenging and uncertain times. The Tibetan Buddhist teacher, Pema Chodron, offers a beautiful and insightful way of understanding this fundamental truth of life. She says, things falling apart is a kind of testing and also a kind of healing. We think that the point is to pass the test or to overcome the problem, but the truth is that things don't really get solved. They come together and they fall apart. Then they come together again and fall apart again. It's just like that. The healing comes from letting there be room for all of this to happen. Room for grief, for relief, for misery, for joy. Right? So she creates a framework for understanding our lives, right? And to be able to lean into the uncertainty, to lean into the impermanence of things, and to allow life in all of its complexities, in all of its joys and miseries, and in everything, to be able to experience it fully. So we often think of, spiritual awakening as a journey, right, to the top of the mountain, where we leave behind all of our attachments and desires, and we progress, right, arduously and steadily up this mountain, right? However, in Buddhism, and in particular Shin Buddhism, our spiritual path and our spiritual awakening occurs when we go into the valleys of our lives, into the dark places, the places that lie in the shadow of the mountains. This journey within ourselves is the heart of the Nembutsu path, is the heart of what the Dharma is teaching us, to look within, to journey and explore within ourselves. In Shin Buddhism, we discuss this ultimate religious experience called Shinjin in our tradition. And Shinjin, right, is based on this idea of deep mind. This idea that first, so you can see here, this is a writing of Shinran from the Jodo Shinshu, in which he describes what deep mind is, right? And right, one is to believe that we are deeply karmic, foolish beings. But it's also to believe that we are embraced by ultimate wisdom and compassion, that our lives are transformed and embraced by this light, by this compassion, by this working of the Buddha in our lives. And so this deep mind, this understanding happens simultaneously, right? So as we come to know ourselves, as we come to explore our inner life, right, and our limitations and our humanness, that's when we come to realize the working of this amazing power that is beyond ourselves, right, which allows us to live, allows us to sustain, and to be here, right now. And so, Shinran Shonin, right, the founder of Jodo Shinshu, realized that the spiritual journey to perfect awakening in the Pure Land was a journey through imperfection. Shin Buddhist scholar Taitetsu Uno once described the Pure Land path as this taking place by descending into the valley, the shadow of the mountains, right? He believed that it is in the valley and the shadows where where Shin spirituality, where our spiritual lives flourish, because it is where we encounter the dynamic activity and the working of wisdom and compassion of Amida Buddha. This metaphor illustrates Shinran's fundamental spiritual insight of imperfection and radical acceptance, which leads to a life of transformation, healing, and resilience. Shinran's spiritual path was one of critical self-reflection about his own limitations as a human being, by awakening to the activity of perfect wisdom and compassion working in his life. And haven't we been journeying through the valleys and the shadows of our lives over the past several years? And so we know this intimately. We've experienced it at a very visceral level. And so in our tradition, we say the Nembutsu, right? Namo Amida Butsu, as a reminder, as an offering of gratitude to this working of wisdom and compassion, right? But here we can see Namo Amida Butsu also, right, encompasses, right, this idea of deep mind, right? That it holds both the two aspects of deep mind within itself, right? Namo means I give up, right? Or I entrust. And Amida Butsu, to a power beyond the self, right? So together, right? Namo Amida Butsu means my own life and the life that sustains me becomes one, right? Ultimately, this is what Shinran discovered. The power of saying I'm not okay, the power of saying I'm limited, I'm human only, right? And in that admission, right, in that acknowledgement came freedom, came an empowerment for his life. You know, Professor Mark Uno describes Shinran's spiritual awakening as, at the deepest level, Shinran saw himself as the recipient of the gift of Dharma rather than its dispenser. His true Buddhist identity came into relief only in the solitary light of his own self-awareness. The truth of the self can only be truly seen when one is alone with the universe. It was in the realization of Dharma and enlightenment as a gift from Amida Buddha that Shinran saw his full humanness, and which served as the foundation for his life, right? That was the source of resilience. That was the source of the courage to face his life. And in similar fashion, we can own our own brokenness and transform our imperfections into a source of compassion, of strength, and of healing. The Shin Buddhist path views the shadow of our imperfections as the reason for a life of awakening. Shinran describes this spiritual process in one of his wasans, his poems. And he says this: obstructions of karmic evil turn into virtues. It is like the relation of ice and water. The more the ice, the more the water. The more the obstructions, the more the virtues. This life of honest self-reflection and transformation is essential to understanding Shinran's view of human nature and of Shin Buddhist spirituality. How does this realization of imperfection function in our lives? How does Shin Buddhist spirituality lead to a life of transformation and change? You know, Reverend Dr. Taitetsu Uno says this: this light of Amida Buddha not only illuminates our darkness, it transforms it so that we try our best to be compassionate with a sense of humility and gratitude, mindful of our karmic limitations. Humility arises for having been shown our karma-bound self, yet grateful for the boundless compassion that inspires us to act with a new and vigorous appreciation for life. Uno's words describes a Shin Buddhist spirituality of imperfection and how it can serve as a foundation for our lives. In what ways have we experienced this during this time of pandemic in our own personal lives, right? How has our darkness, our internal darkness, been transformed, right, on a daily basis by the working of wisdom and compassion? Right, the ultimate spiritual reality for Shinran is the realization that human beings are karmically burdened and limited in their capacity for attaining enlightenment. And thus, we are embraced by the compassionate activity of Amida Buddha. Shinran's spirituality thus relies upon Amida's power, which is beyond our limited ego self. This dynamic relationship between an individual and Amida serves as the heart of the Shin path, which, according to Reverend Takamaro Shigaraki, means that the Buddha's great compassion does not exist apart from our realization of our own defiled passions and karmic sins. Great compassion exists necessarily when it takes in our karmic sins. Now, this acknowledgement and acceptance of our imperfections is the heart of Shin Buddhism, which opens up the possibility for transformation and healing. Shinran's understanding of human nature and spirituality can be seen in this paradoxical relationship of truly living with our imperfections and limitations every moment of our lives. But the burdens of our limitations are transformed, right, into the source of awakening, into the source of becoming fully human. Right? Shinran came to understand that these imperfections are an integral part of who we are and are inseparable from the activity of the sacred in our life. It is only because of our imperfections and rough edges that the sacred, that Amida Buddha exists and is able to embrace us fully. If our lives were perfectly smooth, there would be nothing for the sacred to grasp onto and to hold onto. Right? We are embraced by the Buddha because we have our rough edges, because we have our cracks. And it's only when Shinran embraced uncertainty and realized his lack of control and accepted his helplessness that his imperfections were transformed into the cause of spiritual awakening. It was only because Shinran had rough edges that Amida was able to grasp him. And it was only because of the gaping holes in his life that the Dharma had some place to fill. This radical acceptance of our imperfections is the essence of the Pure Land path. This is what it means to embrace our shadow. The Zen priest, Joan Sutherland, shares this following insight into the ultimate religious experience of Buddhism. Right? Enlightenment, awakening, right? And for me, this resonates with how I understand Shin Buddhism and the way Amida Buddha embraces me. She says this: perhaps enlightenment is that which comes toward us, a previously unimaginable grace, while awakening is that which arises inside us to prepare for and meet the grace and to hold it once it's come. Right? This is a great way to explain, right, the working of wisdom and compassion in our life, the working of the vow, the working of Amida coming to us, right? And how we receive it, how we come to know it, right? In Buddhism, suffering is caused by delusion. We delude ourselves to the reality of our own limited abilities, right? We delude ourselves by believing we are not subject to the realities of old age, of sickness and death. This truth of impermanence is our inherent fundamental imperfection, which we seek to deny. Realizing our ultimate powerlessness in overcoming imperfection is essential to spiritual awakening. In our struggle for perfection, we delude ourselves by denying all the things that make us less than perfect. Right? We all think we're better than we really are, right? That's just human nature, right? So we obsess over the unattainable ideal of perfection and suffer as a result. When we give up our misguided struggle for perfection and accept all of our faults, inadequacies, and limitations, we are then able to find wholeness by reclaiming our full humanness. It is this acceptance of imperfection which then becomes the foundation for healing. However, the realization of this truth is the hardest step because we cling so tightly to the belief that we are more perfect than we really are. Shin Buddhist spirituality begins when we give up trust in our imperfect ego self and to realize that we are not alone in our spiritual struggle. It is only through this spiritual process of acknowledging and accepting our inherent flawedness where Shin spirituality can be realized. So Mark Professor Mark Uno says this: each of us rises up with life, like water seeking to escape the salty seas of samsara, forgetting that liberation rests not in escape, but in immersing ourselves in the very depths of suffering. Illuminated by the limitless warmth of the sun, we are reminded to return to our own true nature in the ocean of samsara. Right? Again, here we see that spirituality or spiritual path is not this ascending of the mountain and leaving behind our attachments and our fetters and our our kleshas, right? But it is going into immersing ourselves in the valley and the shadows and the ocean of samsara and the ocean of suffering, right? That's where we discover our true selves. That's where we discover the working of wisdom and compassion that embraces us and never abandons us. I wanted to share with you this story, right? While I was in seminary at IBS, the Institute of Buddhist Studies, I did some professional training in chaplaincy. So I undertook clinical pastoral education, or CPE, over at the Pacific Health Ministry in Honolulu. And so my clinical assignment was working at the Queen's Medical Center to be able to integrate, right, my religious learning with this practical clinical training. And while in the hospital, I would often spend time in the chapel on the 4th floor, I believe, between patient visits. And there I discovered this lovely statue of Amida Buddha, which was hidden behind stained glass doors in the altar area of this interfaith non-denominational chapel. And it reminded me, right, that wisdom and compassion embraces all who seek refuge from suffering and sorrow, regardless of whether we perceive it. Amida suffers with us and is our constant companion throughout our life's journey. In my ministry, Amida is my constant companion, reminding me that I do not and cannot do this work alone. Every patient I encountered in the hospital, I did not visit alone, right? Every member of my Sangha that I care for, I do not care for alone, right? Amida was always present, is always present in this dynamic conversation of and working of Namo Amida Butsu. That even in times of feeling isolated and alone, I was always in the care of the Buddha. In the hymns of the Pure Land Masters, right, one of Shinran's Wasan, he shares his appreciation and gratitude for the working of Amida in his life. Right, my eyes being hindered by blind passions, I cannot perceive the light that grasps me. Yet the great compassion, without tiring, illumines me always. That even in our darkest moments, there is light, which warms and comforts and gives us hope. Throughout my time as a chaplain, I encountered only, one Nembutsu follower. Mrs. Nakamura, not her real name, was in her mid-90s and was in failing health. I stopped by her room during my regular rounds in the ICU, the intensive care unit. And upon entering, I was greeted by her children, as Mrs. Nakamura was dozing at the time. Her 2 daughters and son explained to me her condition and how, while they were not Buddhists themselves, they would take their mom often to the Jodo Shinshu temple in town, and she was very devout. I shared with them that while I was an interfaith chaplain, I was ordained as a Buddhist priest with the Hongwanji. And so we spent a lot of time talking about their lives, about their mom, and her son, while he was Christian, believed that, all religions teach good things. And I shared with them that, the Buddha's compassion embraces all beings equally, and especially in times of distress, in times of suffering, in times just like this. I also told them that, being here for your mom is the working of compassion. Your love will see you through this difficult time. I observed that they were a very close family and that they had a genuine affection and concern and care for each other and their mother. Sometime during the visit and this conversation that we were having, Mrs. Nakamura woke up and her daughter said, "Ma, the bonsan is here." And so I approached her bed and I told her, "Oh, Mrs. Nakamura, you are so lucky to have your children here with you. Would you like to say the Nembutsu together?" And with that, she smiled and immediately put her frail hands together in Gasho. And I offered these words: "May the Buddha's light of all-inclusive wisdom and compassion embrace and comfort you always. Namo Amida Butsu." Mrs. Nakamura quietly repeated Namandab, Namandab, Namandab several times, after which she dozed off again, surrounded by her children. Upon leaving, I wished them well and told them that I would be available if they needed me. I learned that Mrs. Nakamura passed away peacefully the next day. As I reflect on this encounter, I am reminded of the working of compassion in the midst of suffering, of how the simple presence of a mother's children by her bedside manifests Amida's vow, of how saying Namo Amida Butsu affirms the reality of what is and the joy of what will come to be. That we are never alone in our suffering, even when we are powerless to change things. As a minister, I did very little other than to listen, to be present, and to remind Mrs. Nakamura and her children of the love that was already with them. The quiet and heartfelt Nembutsu said by Mrs. Nakamura was a demonstration of truly hearing the Buddha's vow of compassion, of truly being embraced and living within the vow. Right, so Brianna Wiest says this: "To clear the muddy water, we must often just leave it alone. To succeed, we must fail. To be beautiful, we must embrace our uniqueness and see ourselves as enough. To learn, we must try. To be better, we must be brave and must brave our inner storms." Right? The Buddha's life is a lesson in bravery. Shakyamuni Buddha, right, journeyed through the scariest place of all, his own heart and mind, and discovered the potential for awakening that each of us is capable of. The story of the Buddha's birth ends tragically with the death of Siddhartha's mother, Queen Maya, 7 days after the birth of the prince, and reminded that even the most noble among us are unable to escape the impermanent nature of our existence. It is this fundamental truth that we must confront and overcome if we, like the Buddha, are to understand the meaning of our human birth. Right? In the homages, it says, "Hard it is to be born into human life. Now we are living it. Difficult it is to hear the teaching of the Blessed One. Now we hear them." This reminds us of how precious our lives truly are and how remarkable it is for us to encounter such profound teachings that will lead us to a life of awakening. A desire to answer these fundamental questions of life would cause Siddhartha to leave the safety and the comfort of his home and all that he knew to discover and share the way out of suffering. He bravely left home to begin the ultimate journey within himself. How many of you would consider yourself brave? What does being brave mean to you? For me, being brave means that we can see life clearly with an open mind and heart. Being brave also means that we can love ourselves, just as Amida Buddha does. Isn't loving and accepting ourselves often the hardest thing that we do? Amida Buddha is the dynamic force of wisdom and compassion and love, which is always present, embracing us just as we are. And when we awaken to this great wisdom and compassion that supports and makes our lives possible, we can live bravely without fear, without worry, with strength, with resilience, and with courage. So being brave means that we are able to accept ourselves fully and face everything we encounter with courage and strength. Being brave means that we are able to handle both the smooth and the rough patches of our lives equally. Living the Buddha's teaching means that we become true and real human beings who live without hesitation, without reservation, and with true freedom, because we are embraced just as we are. And because we are embraced, we can live with greater kindness and compassion for ourselves and others. Living and acting with a heart of compassion is the way we transform ourselves and our world. And we need this even more so today. The Dharma shows us how to bravely see ourselves in our full humanness, the good, the bad, and the sometimes ugly. The Buddha teaches us how our lives are a series of causes and conditions which come together and fall apart in an endless cycle of transformation and change. And we suffer because we desperately cling to the illusion that life should be permanent, unchanging, and the way we want it to be. Always, right? However, we all know that life is impermanent and filled with dissatisfaction. Hasn't the past year and a half been a master course in this truth of life? We have had to continually adjust and pivot and change with the rapidly evolving circumstances and events in our world and in our lives. So often we want certainty and definitive answers. However, it is this desire which causes us to suffer as well, right? We need to allow space for uncertainty and room for not knowing, which is the place of growth. One of my former seminary instructors, the Reverend Dr. Seigen Yamaoka, who was the former bishop of the BCA, posted once on Facebook. He said this: "Without change, we cannot grow. So move with it. Be with the flow." So when we give up on the illusion of control, we are then able to realize the possibility of transformation and healing, which comes to us. And so John Cagg and Clancy Martin offer this thought. Resignation is not regarded as a virtue in our society, but perhaps it should be. Perhaps knowing when to let go, when to relinquish control, when to free ourselves from the habits of thought that so often constrain us. Maybe this is true prudence, what many ancient sages regarded as the virtue of virtues, right? When we give up control of our ability, right, to manage everything, right, in that space, in that openness, we can discover healing, we can discover a way forward, right? We can discover new ways of being, right? Opening our hearts to the unknown is scary. However, intentionally making ourselves vulnerable is the only way to discover our true self, which is within the embrace of the Buddha. When I moved to Kona several years ago, my dad drove over from Hilo to deliver my grandparents' obutsudan to me. And I don't know how old the altar is. You can see the picture here. But I always remember them having it. What makes the altar so special is that it contains my grandparents' ihai, or the wooden memorial tablets. And my grandparents were such big parts of my life that to be able to care for their obutsudan is quite special and meaningful. And so each morning, I start the day by lighting the candle and offering incense and chanting a sutra. And in this moment, right, I'm also able to greet my grandparents each morning and to thank them for their continuing influence in my life. And so while I live alone here, I'm not alone because they are always with me in the dynamic activity of Namo Amida Butsu. They have become personal Buddhas for me, who help me to feel ever connected to the rhythms and the cycles of life. This ritual of starting my day with them and the Buddha has been healing, especially during this time of pandemic. Right? What rituals do you have in your own life that connect you to something greater than yourself? Right? What rituals in your life help you to encounter the presence of Amida Buddha? Right? What rituals help you to hear the calling voice of the Buddha, calling us home, right? Embracing us, reminding us that we are not alone, ever, that we are cared for, that we are loved, and that we are sustained by seen and unseen forces that we should always be grateful for. And this is how, right, in our tradition, we can cultivate resilience, right, is through this practice of connecting, of receiving the Buddha's compassion. Roshi Joan Halifax, the Zen teacher, says this. Dostoevsky said, "To live without hope is to cease to live." His words remind us that apathy is not an enlightened path. We are called to live with possibility, knowing full well that impermanence prevails, so why not just show up? Right? So Buddhism, right, is a path of realistic optimism, a path of endless potential and possibilities, while living in this world of samsara, right? But that happens when we transform our perspective, when we shift and we pivot and we go beyond our self-created boundaries of our lives and ways of thinking. And so, because the foundation of our lives is the embrace of the Buddha, we can just show up and try and live and struggle along this difficult journey, this difficult road that we're on. And so, discovering hope. In his book, Discovering Buddhism in Everyday Life, Reverend Marvin Harada, who is now the bishop of the BCA, shares a moving story about Scott Morris, a temple member at the Orange County Buddhist Church who was living with ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease. In a temple support group for those dealing with major illness, Reverend Harada asked Scott to write his thoughts on his illness, or to write things that he would want his family to read years from now. And inspired by the Nembutsu, he wrote this poem. "I have ALS, and I am grateful. I'm grateful to retire early to be with my family. I'm grateful I have family and friends that are so supportive and hopeful. I'm grateful I can still walk and get around. When that is gone, I'm grateful I can still use my hands to feed myself. When that is gone, I am grateful I can still breathe and laugh and feel. When that is gone, I'm grateful I had a wonderful life. And when that is gone, Namo Amida Butsu." This poem illustrates how the Nembutsu, Namo Amida Butsu, is more than just a word or an expression. It is a deep and profound truth that transcends time and space, life and death. Reverend Harada says, "The Nembutsu is a profound truth that illuminates our life, that gives meaning, comfort, and even gratitude to us, even in the face of tragedy." Scott Morris, in this wonderful poem, gives all of us a wonderful teaching and message to awaken to and to receive this truth of the Nembutsu, Namo Amida Butsu. What a tremendous gift Scott left to his family that would inspire and offer wisdom for living long after his birth in the Pure Land. What an amazing lesson for us on how the Nembutsu offers us a way of dealing with the many challenges that we face. And so, right, Joan Sutherland, sums up this way of viewing life, the way of viewing our lives, right, on the Buddhist path, right? We still have bodies that break down in all sorts of amazing ways. We still face injustice and conflict. Awakening isn't a waiver from the shared circumstances of human life, but it can transform how we take part in them. We are no longer beleaguered exiles, but people who can find home even in difficult times. People who are aware of the unlikely presence of awakening even in difficult moments. People who are willing to feel our way in the dark to help bring it forth. Right? What an amazing way to view life, to view our lives, right? As we struggle along, right, this journey, but guided by the Buddha Dharma, but guided by Shinran's teachings, right? We can live empowered, right? To own our full humanness, to own our shadow, to embrace it, right? And not to fear it, right? And so Shin Buddhism, or Shin Buddhist wisdom for living, right? Some takeaways, right, are this, right? To be human is to be perfectly imperfect. We are affirmed just as we are. We are healed when we know that we are not alone, that we are in relationship with the Buddha, that we're in relationship with our loved ones who have gone before, that we're in relationship with people in our lives currently, right? We are healed when we know that we are seen and heard and thought of and embraced, right? How gratitude has the power to transform our lives, as we can see in Scott Morris's story and in his poem, his beautiful poem, right? How gratitude transformed his relationship to his illness, transformed his understanding of suffering, transformed his way of dealing, right, with what he was facing, right? And ultimately, Nembutsu, Namo Amida Butsu, is true resilience that we can always rely on, that we can always entrust in, that is always with us, wherever, whenever, however we are in our journey. And so I began, my talk with quoting Stevie Nicks, and I'll conclude my talk with Stevie Nicks as well. And I chose this song, and the song resonated with me because, right, it reminds me of how I am capable, how each of us is capable of sailing through the changing ocean tides, how we can handle all the seasons of our lives together. And so take a moment, maybe, I guess I can't share the song, having technical difficulties, but you get the idea, right? That each of us is capable, right? Each of us is able to live our lives, right? So the Buddha's teachings invite us to bravely engage life with all of its contradictions. A wise and realistic hope can be cultivated when we embrace our shadow and open our hearts to uncertainty and change. Right? The Dharma is our lifeline as we dive into the ultimate groundlessness of our lives. Namo Amida Butsu connects us to the inconceivable life of the Buddha, reminding us that we are never alone in our struggle. This radical shift in perspective is the promise of the Dharma. The Buddha's teachings help us to understand and to manage life with greater kindness, compassion, and equanimity, in this Pure Land path of Shinran Shonin. Namo Amida Butsu is a promise from Amida Buddha to embrace, never to abandon. Namo Amida Butsu holds us in both our joys and our sorrows and transforms our ignorance into wisdom, our greed into generosity, and our anger into love. Namo Amida Butsu can help us to meet life's challenges, to rise up to life's challenges with greater courage, greater resilience, and greater peace. With the Nembutsu as at the center of our lives, we can bravely face the unknown when things keep falling apart. So mahalo. Thank you for being here and for joining this seminar. And so let's have a discussion. Let's talk story. So any thoughts or any ways that you've been dealing or struggling right through this time, and how do you use the Dharma? How do you use the teachings in your life to cultivate resilience, to cultivate strength?
Reverend Higa, this is Lily Lambert.
Hi, Lily.
I appreciate very much your teaching today, and I see that that is the true approach to Jodo Shinshu, how we should connect with Amida Buddha. And I appreciate very much your expose about all the troubles that we might have. Because of those troubles, we are close to the Buddha. And so the problem I see in most people is people don't acknowledge that we have troubles, we have impermanence. People believe that they are content with their life and they don't need they are able to deal with all the trouble in their lives. So there's a lack of motivation to get close to the Buddha. So did you see that? So did you see that in our tradition, in our practice, that we don't have enough motivation?
Right, I think that's right, the endless struggle, right? That we always think that we are more capable than we really are,
Yeah.
right? That we can handle, we can manage, and we can do everything, right? And be everything, right? But we come to realize that sometimes we aren't enough, right? That we don't have all the answers, right? And what we think is the answer, we think sometimes there's only one way to do something, right? One way to be. Right, but there are multiple ways of being, multiple ways of solving a problem, right? But we have to be open and receptive to what is there, right? And Buddhism helps us to be present with that, to be present with suffering, to be present with our suffering, but also to open our hearts and minds to the possibilities, right? The potential, right? That is always there. If we let go, if we loosen our grip, right, on our ego, loosen our grip on the way we think life has to be, right, then we can discover how life needs to be. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your comments. I think ultimately, right, we can see, right, from our teachings, right, from this path that there is hope. There's hope for transformation. There's hope for change. There's hope for us in our struggles. Always, right? And when we realize that we are not alone, right? How comforting is that, right? How does that strengthen us? How does that allow us to be resilient in our lives?
Hey, Blayne.
Hey, Reverend Al.
Hey, thank you for your talk today. And I share that kind of same sentiment with you as far as, your experience at the Queens and CPE. And, it was funny when you were talking about your story about Mrs. Nakamura. And, when she woke up and you went to talk to her, I thought you were going to say, "No, Sensei, I'm not dead yet. Come later." But thanks again.
Thanks. Right, but that's the I wasn't wearing my robes, yeah, so didn't so
Right. But I think we need, really concrete things. I mean, I think later we can have the ministers discuss it, but what can some concrete things that people, Sangha members can do to help with their resiliency and um, their struggles, whether it's, taking a walk and saying 100 Nembutsus or, just getting out, getting fresh air, talking with people, even on the phone, or maybe we can have a FaceTime seminar, teach people how to do FaceTime. I know my mother-in-law struggles with FaceTime with the kids. So, hey, but this is really good. So let me not hog the mic. It's not karaoke. So thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, I think Richard Ito has a question.
Yes, not so much a question, but I thought Reverend Al's comments was a good segue into what I wanted to give you as some feedback. I thought you did a very good presentation, and you related life in general, and you also brought in Buddhism in there. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of feedback from my perspective, and maybe that's where the difficulty is. I see Buddhism as being highly useful in getting through life here, and so today's focus was not so much negative, but I think helpful. But when you're talking about these things, I have made a lot of effort on my own to find out and to understand what samsara was, and uh, um, you know, uh, shinjin, and that sort of thing. So it kind of fills in a structure, and you can discuss things more meaningfully. Um, and these are things I did not get from attending the local temple at all. We get all these stories, but nobody. It's kind. I feel I kind of got to the point where I think I understand it. It's kind of like coming out of World War II, and we're still hiding Buddhism, and we're trying to look like a Christian church or something. But it's like, okay, Buddhists has got these great concepts out there that we need to talk about, not to a high level, but we need to get beyond an elementary level. I think the example that stands out to me is when we do the three treasures. It's I go to the Buddha for guidance, I go to the Sangha for guidance, Dharma for guidance, Sangha for guidance, and that's it. And we never go beyond that. And when the other grandfather in the family is a retired Buddhist minister. And when he was talking to me about the three treasures, he goes, hard is it, the life and all, the full thing. And I go, wow, there's so much more meaning in that. And we never even said that. So I was totally unaware of it. So, I think that's the problem at many temples, that I first caught on to this, and when one of the other members in another temple said, my friend asked me, what is your temple, or what is Buddhism all about? And she couldn't answer the question. She's been attending for years. So I think that would help people get more out of it coming, and more people would come too. It's a great tool. So yes, I'd like to encourage. I'm glad to see the local ministers putting on this type of event, and I hope we can actually get it on Sundays as well. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Buddhism offers, right, very deep and profound insights into life and to human nature, right? But it also offers very practical,
Yes.
right, ways of managing life, of seeing ourselves, of how are we, right? And in our tradition, right, in Jodo Shinshu, we often use the term ondobo ondogyo, right, or fellow traveler, to describe members of our sangha, right? That each of us, right, is a guide and a friend to the other, right? That each of us helps each other along the journey of life, right? To live the teachings, to understand the teachings, right? And so we live the three treasures, right, every day, right, as we're a community, right, as sangha, as community, as a group of fellow travelers, right? That's where the Buddha lives, right? And that's where the Dharma comes alive, right, in our lives, in our daily lives. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I agree totally. I'm just kind of saying, kind of a hint, it's not getting through at many of the local temples. Like I said, I got this in COVID times, because I went to a lot of Zoom places, and I did reading on my own, and it's like, okay, what am I going to the temple for? And this is just support. I'm not trying to put that down at all. It's more like, okay, but I'm not hearing all these good things which you are trying to tell us about. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, TJ, for your comment in the chat. It's true, right? We when we remember, right, a practical way of how we find resilience, right? We just came through the Obon season, right? In the summertime, right? And the time of remembrance, of joyful memory, right? And we remember our loved ones, remember those that have come before, right? Or remember their lessons that continue to inspire us, continue to guide us, right? And remembering their connection, the connection we still have with them, that is a source of resilience, right? Is that deep connection, that they're never gone from us. They're always a part of us, that their light continues to shine in our lives.
Hi, I'm Connie Fay. I'm with the Honokaa Hongwanji. I'm a member of the Honokaa Hongwanji. Hi. And I just want to second what Richard is saying, that this the seminars have been very helpful. And I'm not in the cultural tradition of Shin Buddhism. And you come to the temple through my relationship with Miles and Lynn and Lynn Higashi, Miles Okamura, and the involvement with the peace activities. And for me, the Buddhist tradition throughout my life has come to my attention in my spiritual development. And so now that I'm living here, and this Honokaa is really the temple is really the place where I find the most spiritual compatibility, just with the community, with the Sangha, and even though cultural tradition isn't mine, the spiritual tradition is mine. And so I find this intersection, you know, with the seminars of bringing in a way of deepening my understanding of the traditional Shin teaching and culture. So, you know, it's been very helpful for me to come to the seminar. Today was very, I don't want to use the word enlightening, but that's what comes to mind. It spoke to me really deeply, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Reverend Blayne. This is Judy Muramoto Jikoin.
Hi.
Hi there. I like the previous speaker, Ms. Fee. I did I guess connect to your thought, your talk today, and normally I try to take notes, but I swear you had so many references, you know, all of your quotes that I couldn't. I just didn't take any notes, and I just said, okay, I'm just going to listen or read or see. And I like that, you know, you went from, yeah, you had the whole spectrum. I mean, Stevie Nicks, and then you went to all these philosophers, and then the modern ones also. But what came to my mind was, in Western philosophy, it's always like, I'm okay, you're okay, or it's always it's a different way. And then in Buddhism, when you look at it, you know how you stress, okay, I'm a bombo, or what, the imperfect self. So I think we can look at it from both sides, because we're Western raised. We think the Western way, where I don't know if there's so much ego in it, so that we're kind of like, we're always good, I guess. But like in Jodo Shinshu, we learn, we do have to work at it. I mean, there's a lot to be done, and like you said, as we work at it, we do have fellow travelers along the way. And when we actually support each other. I don't know if anybody else has thoughts like that, but yes, and I really agree about your rituals. If you say that you do a sutra chant in the morning, and then, you know, you connect with your grandparents, and then thinking of the Buddha's teachings, and I think, I don't know if I'm rambling, but because of this COVID thing, because of COVID, I'm grateful in a way, because of that, I've learned how to Zoom, or to go on Google, or to look up these sites, and then to listen to presenters like the Hongwanji presented in the Dhammathon when you were on that. So yes, thank you very much. I don't know what. I didn't have a question. Maybe I'll have a question later, but I'm just very grateful that I took the effort to go to this https // I've never done that before, because I said, there's no Zoom link. How do I get this? And I said, oh, I'm just going to try to go through this unending long whatever. What is this thing called? HTTPS. What do they call that thing? This address. But once I did that, then everything popped up, and then I could register. I thought it was going to be a long thing, but thank you. But I think maybe in the future, can we just get a Zoom link so we don't have to do this thing? Because people like, well, I'm 75, so, you know, computer stuff. And like the other gentleman who spoke to me, maybe we could have, or like, was that Reverend Al who said maybe we could have classes on computer or technology things, so that I think he was talking about people like me, the older ones who are not too computer smart. Anyway, thank you. I didn't mean to take up so much of your time, but I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Mahalo, malama pono.
Right, what you're mentioning, right? In Jodo Shinshu, right? We're not okay, right? And that's okay, right? I think that's the shift in perspective, right? From a Shin Buddhist perspective, right? Is to recognize, right, our own limitations, recognize our own imperfectness, right? Imperfections, and yet not be trapped by them, right? So because all of us are in the same situation, all of us are struggling along to be more fully human, right? That's why we have the teachings to help us to be more human, right? To be more fully human. So thank you for that. And but you every obstacle, every challenge, right, presents an opportunity for us, right? As you mentioned, right? If the pandemic didn't happen, this seminar wouldn't be taking place, or these seminars wouldn't be taking place, right? That in the struggle to respond to the crises of our times, we've had to be creative, be innovative, to use technology in different ways and to stretch ourselves, to grow, right? Like what Reverend Dr. Seigen Yamaoka had mentioned about growth and about change, right? And about looking at the opportunities that challenges present to us. So that's the ultimate optimism, right, of Buddhism, is that no life, no experience is ever wasted, right? It's a source of compassionate living and discovering who we are and how we can be just a little bit better, right, each and every day. So,
Reverend Blayne, is there anybody else with comments? Otherwise, I just have one more.
Oh.
Is there anybody else trying to get on?
I don't think so.
Okay, real fast. I think it was at the lay convention in September when there, after all the speakers, well, there was like it was a panel discussion or something, but they had young people come on, and one thing I remember from one of these gentlemen was, I think he had gone away to college, lived on the mainland, got married, but brought his family back to Maui, I think. But what he said was that he noticed was not everybody can connect to the temple, because maybe sometimes, we're steeped in tradition, we're steeped in Japanese Buddhist tradition, Jodo Shinshu. So where if they were not raised in the culture, because with the religion comes the culture, right? So new people coming in may not understand our traditions. So that, or maybe I'm getting it mixed up, but one of the guest speakers might have said that culture can be a barrier too. Where it can be a positive, it can also be a slight wall where newcomers might not feel at ease because they don't understand. So I'm thinking, but this your previous lady, Miss Faye, said that she am I correctly understanding that she said, though she's not raised in the culture, she has lived in Honokaa, and the temple has come to be a place of peace for her. I guess she's, not got accustomed, but maybe she understands the culture and the tradition. Can you see what I'm saying about if people are new and maybe they're not raised in the Japanese culture or Okinawan culture,
in a
whatever.
seminar, we can engage directly with each other. That's one of the beauties of
Yes,
this
yes, yes.
technology,
Mm.
even though we're very far apart. Yeah. In addition to peace, it's also a vital culture. So I'm in
Mhm.
interaction with people who
It's so
we're on the
important.
same path,
Uh-huh.
and we got to the moment where we're sharing the path from very different backgrounds, from very
Yes,
different
yes.
places,
Uh-huh.
and still we're fellow travelers. We're in the Sangha together. We speak a language with each other that has been developed over centuries in many cultures. And now we're in America.
Yes,
We're in
thank you.
Hawaii.
Thank you.
And so there's that possibility of being able to work together day by day to keep, in Western tradition, Carl Jung posited that the spiritual work of human development is to, moment by moment through the day, to keep an eye on the shadow. That's our main work. And that's why you use the word shadow, Reverend, and I thought, well, that's very appropriate, because that does open up the concept of the Western understanding of the path to human development, the knowing oneself requires keeping an eye on the shadow, appreciating when our Sangha, and our fellow travelers, even people who are not in the Buddhist tradition, can say, oh, I see your shadow. And that happens, we're in a really big time of shadow in the cult, in just the dilemma that humanity is finding itself in a pandemic. It's all over the world. And now what we're hearing is, okay, we're going to have to live with COVID. And so that's a big change. We've been thinking, oh, we can win this war, or, the way we've been talking about this disease. But now we have to find a way to integrate the fact that now there's a new pathogen that we all are exposed to, and how do we make our peace with forming a way of living on the planet together? It's the same with climate change. I mean, we have really big challenges as human beings.
Great, thank you.
So,
Thank you so much.
it's good to have travelers.
Yes, thank you.
To have a way to talk about, what our way of finding some kind of touchstone day in and day out that religion offers. And for me now, Shin Buddhism. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I saw Esther has her hand raised.
Yes. Thank you. It was a really great talk. And a lot of people know that most of my Buddhist background is on the mainland. And because of that, your talk was so much more familiar to me, where senseis used my great teacher is Reverend Art Takimoto, who's passed away, the late Akin. So they always quote many, many teachers when they give their talks or seminars. And I like the way you included a music person, Stevie Nicks, and then Zen teachers, and also many Jodo Shinshu teachers. And that's like Reverend Yamaoka is just one of the great teachers for me too. So I think that helps us understand Buddhism a lot more than just Jodo Shinshu. you know, and we're in an age that we need to share the other other Buddhist teachers to really appreciate Buddhism. And so I like the way that you did that. And relating to about sort of stuck, Richard Ito saying about kind of stuck. Again, on the mainland, because they were incarcerated, I think they're making much better effort to be open and inclusive and getting more people to come to the temple. And that was evident in the last, like Judy said, the last lay convention. I got to go because, as an observer, because I learned Zoom too. And if I hadn't had Zoom, I would never go to the lay convention because I'm a caregiver and it wouldn't allow me to do it. So thank you for having these series of lectures, because it really has allowed us to hear more people. And again, we do need talks that are really open up even more our horizon on understanding of what Buddhism is, the way you did today, because what Shinran discovered is great, but he too studied many, many different teachers before he came to that conclusion. And again, that's, we are all on the we are Ondobo Ondogyo travelers. We're all the travelers of the Buddhist path, not only Jodo Shinshu. You know, so thank you for being so inclusive and giving us, you know, quotes from different teachers. And for me, that was very helpful and very opens things up much, much more. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess if not, thank you so much for being here and for participating this morning. And then please join me in Gasho and let's recite the Nembutsu together. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu. A questionnaire will be sent to you, so please fill that out. It helps us with our programming. If you'd like to see more Buddhist education offerings, please let us know what other topics or interests that you may have that we can provide in the coming years. And so Rinban Kazunori Takahashi from Hilo, Betsuin, who will be sharing a seminar on learning from the Shoshinge, the Hymn of True and Trusting, which was written by Shinran Shonin. And then in December, we have a workshop by Reverend Tatsuo Muneto, a retired minister of Hawaii Kyodan, who will be sharing the stories of Nembutsu practitioners on the Big Island, specifically from Kona, from his book, Dharma Treasures. So please look out for those. And again, if you feel compelled, please make a donation and support the work that we're doing. So again, thank you so much. Also, just a reminder, you can also check out this seminar and also previous seminars on our newly created YouTube channel. And the link is in the chat provided by Reverend Tomioka. So again, everybody, thank you so much for coming and participating and for being part of this online Sangha. Again, mahalo, and take care and be safe.